recognize.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman. I appreciate you holding today's hearing.
One or two, right?
I think it's really important as we look at this that today Democrats are continuing to spread misinformation about election laws in Republican-controlled states. They're calling provisions restrictive if it's from a Republican state, while ignoring state laws from Democrat states, in particular Massachusetts, Delaware, Connecticut. Why? Partisan politics. Democrats are trying to use this cover to justify a federal takeover of state election laws. And I'm going to continue to fight against a federal government takeover of state election laws. I think everybody watching this committee hearing should be paying attention that we're pointing out Republican-controlled states and failing to identify or talk about any of the Democratic-controlled states that have the same laws in place. Let me shift gears, if I can, to you, Ms. Winfrey. I appreciate you being here today. As clerk, you were responsible for administering the 2020 general election. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And do you support voter identification for voters?
I do. I do. Mm-hmm.
So you support voter ID in your jurisdiction?
It's the law.
Thank you very much. And in Detroit, did you receive any grant funding from the Center for Tech and Civil Life, CTCL, if you will, the nonprofit organization funded by Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg for the 2020 election?
I did.
And what was the total amount of grants funded for the city of Detroit received from CTCL for the 2020 election cycle?
About $8 million.
About $8 million. I have 7.4, about $8 million. What was the total amount of funds the city of Detroit received from other non-governmental sources?
I'm not sure what the other city, my budget is totally separate from the other, from administration, if you will.
Were there other funds that came in from other nonprofits outside of government entities in the city of Detroit in addition to CTCL, to your knowledge?
As it relates to the Department of Elections, we received $8 million. That's my budget.
That's okay. Did you accept any personnel that were paid for by any non-government entity to assist or be involved with the conduct of the 2020 elections?
Did we received support from CTCL.
Support. Did they report to you or did they report to
not
CTCL?
Physically. Not physically support to me. They are employees. They supported or they reported to CTCL, but they worked with us during the election process.
Okay, and did you apply or seek out any election administration funding?
Yes.
Outside funding?
Yes.
You did?
Yes.
And so you sought that out. I appreciate your testimony. Let me shift gears, if I can, to you, Mr. Cuccinelli. You note in your testimony that the 1902 Virginia Constitution imposed such barriers as poll taxes, literacy tests, and even a civics test as hurdles to registration and voting, kind of disgusting practices in the past. Does any state impose such devices today?
No, elements of them were employed up into the 1960s, and the Voting Rights Act wiped them out very quickly. And they have not been in use anywhere in the United States since very shortly after the Voting Rights Act went into effect.
And so would you say that there's definitely always room for improvement, that the U.S. is fair to say we've made pretty drastic strides from 1965 to 2021?
Well, the numbers show it. I put some of them I pulled a New York Times graph there for my statement. You can see the massive increase in African American participation, which is particularly relevant in a state like Virginia, where Black citizens are a fifth of our state. So that's a critical improvement. It's measurable all across the country. And not every state is the same, but we've come a long, long way wiping out those differences.
Appreciate it. Let me keep rolling here because I got limited time. If you in particular, I think you quite correctly note that many, I think we have just been ignoring, is that Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which outlawed many of the discriminatory voting practices referenced earlier by me, remain on the books. How should Section 2 be employed, in your opinion?
Section 2 should be made permanent and should be used as it's written to root out actual discrimination, which was also addressed in the Brnovich case recently. And it's still there to be used that way. Some people in the Congress talk as if it isn't.
Final question for you. Do you support voter identification for voters?
Photo identification and voter identification, yes.
Thank you very much. Madam Chairwoman, I will yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to our witnesses.